Hello, liberty-minded friends. Welcome to Patty for Liberty. I'm Patty Maloney, and today I'm talking about the Indian Child Welfare Act. If you haven't heard about this, there is a case that's going to the Supreme Court very soon that involves Native American children and our foster care system. As many of you know, I feel very passionately about foster care reform. In this case, an issue is very important to me, which is why I wanted to talk about it. As I started researching this, I realized that many libertarians do not agree with my views on this matter. So that's one of my reasons for wanting to talk about this. Reason and Cato have written stories on this case as well, and I've included links to that in my blog post on the topic, but I share a very different opinion, and I think my opinion is still very libertarian and that they're getting it wrong. So I would really love to hear what other liberty-minded folks think after they hear the entire case and the entire situation, why we have the ICWA Act, and my concerns about the Supreme Court abolishing it. So if you don't mind, I would really appreciate if you hit the like button to support me. I'm trying to create a new type of Liberty channel, one that's not an echo chamber, one where we can agree to disagree, and one that doesn't talk about all the same things libertarians always talk about. We all know taxation is theft. So if you like what I'm doing, please click the like button, subscribe to my channel. I'm going to get right into the Indian Child Welfare Act. Anyone that knows American history knows the story and the history of how our U.S. government treated Native American children. They were forcibly removed from their homes and placed into boarding schools where we forced them to assimilate into white culture. They weren't allowed to speak their own language. They weren't allowed to practice their religious customs. They weren't even allowed to know about their native origin and history. They were abused, many of them, and many of them died in these boarding schools at the hands of our own government. So this is one part of the reason why the Indian Child Welfare Act was created. But even after this historic systemic abuse and where kids were put into boarding schools, even after that was stopped, Native Americans were still being removed from their homes at an alarmingly much more higher rate than other children. And this is the reason why ICWA was established. And I think once you hear the details of the case, you will see that once again, white, affluent Christian Americans are trying to steal Native American children and assimilate them into their culture. And I know that I have a very strong opinion on this, but I think that if you look at the facts, you will see that it is not the white evangelical Christians who have money to fight this and take this to the Supreme Court that are being discriminated against, but rather it is the Native American community and the Native American children who are being discriminated against. And I'm going to keep talking about all the details. I'm breaking this up so that I can cover everything in detail, but I really want to discuss all the facts so that you can see things for yourselves and not the way the story is being presented. Many news outlets have covered this story, including the New York Times, the New York Post, Vox, and Reason and Cato. And most have presented this from the side of the Christian foster parents. They say that it's keeping these parents who are loving from adopting a child, and that this is not in the best interest of the Native American children, at least in this case. So the American Academy of Pediatricians and the American Medical Association have written their own amicus curiae brief that they've submitted to the Supreme Court. And if I said that wrong, I'm sorry, I'm learning a new word. So they submitted a brief, and I will just read one quote from their statement. It said, "Kinship care is now widely recognized, including in general federal policy, as a preferable approach in child welfare for children of all backgrounds. And in their brief, they went on to say how much children do better when they are around their extended family and have kinship care versus being put into a group home or placed with complete strangers. Now, I'm going to say, as most of you know, all 5 of my children were placed into foster care, and this may be the opinion of the AAP and the AMA, but most states don't practice this. They told me that they don't like to place children with their next of kin because their next of kin is likely to have the same problems as the parents themselves, and that they're more likely to let you skirt around things like seeing your kids unsupervised. So I was happy to see that the AAP understands that children need their family and their extended family, and that they do better with extended family versus being put into a group home, which is where most of these Native American children end up. And many of them say that these group homes are making millions off of their kids. So I did not get into that in my blog post, but I did a lot of research on this story before I wrote it. And I hope that you'll go to my blog. I'm going to leave that in the description as well, so that you can read more of the story and follow the links that I included in my post. So in my blog post, I discussed another aspect of this case, which is one of the reasons I feel strongly that ICWA should be protected by our Supreme Court. There was a recent news story from the AAP that discusses the systemic problem with our foster care system and how racially discriminating our foster care system is, where white Christian families are the people taking in these foster care children. White Christian group homes are the ones that are making money from these foster children. And when it comes to our foster care system, the people who are put into foster care the most are Black children, even more so than Native American children. And that perhaps is one of the reasons why people think that ICWA is discriminatory, because they think that we don't prevent Black children from being adopted by people outside of their race. Why are we keeping Native American children? But what they fail to understand, that ICWA was not created to protect a racial group. It was created to protect the 574 sovereign Native American tribes in our country, to keep the jurisdiction in their hands. So there's nothing in the law, in ICWA, that says that these children can't be removed, that they're going to be allowed to stay in abusive homes, or anything like that. It just states that the Native American tribes have the jurisdiction. And the way I see this as a libertarian is that this is no different than saying that Texas can't decide the fate of children from Florida or Ohio. It's putting the jurisdiction in the hands of the Native American tribes. And yes, they do have different laws than many of our states do, but that was the intentions of the act, to let them legislate what's best for their children instead of the U.S. government or the state government. So this is my main argument for why ICWA should be protected, because I believe our Native American tribes deserve to keep their sovereignty, that we shouldn't be making decisions for them, and that they're perfectly capable of deciding their own custody cases. Just because Christian white Americans don't like the way they try to preserve the family unit doesn't mean they're wrong. And the AMA, the AAP, and me all know the kind of damage that foster care does to children, and how much better off they are when you keep them surrounded by their extended family and in their community, instead of ripping them out of the Native American community and putting them in white Christian deserving, loving homes. I realize that I have differing views than many in the liberty community, but I have tons of friends who understand that child protective services and our foster care system get it wrong all the time, and that they do in fact have a bias for Christian white families over Black families, Native American families, poor families, and homeschool families. My children were removed primarily because of mental health issues, homeschooling, and because of my lifestyle they didn't agree with. And one of my children was adopted by a Christian conservative family, and the court did not care how it affected his other siblings who were traumatized by having their brother removed from them. The foster care system is inconsistent, regularly removes poor children from their homes and places them in Christian families. This is one of my reasons why I think ICWA needs to be preserved, but I also think that ICWA was intended to protect Native American kids from exactly this situation. I hope that the Supreme Court gets this one right. I fear that they won't, based on how they've been ruling in the last several cases. I have written about this on my blog. I hope that you will go read it. I hope that you will leave me a comment with your thoughts. And let me know what you think. Do you think that this couple these families are being discriminated against? Or do you think ICWA needs to remain intact? Let me know in the comments, and thank you guys, my Liberty friends, for supporting me while I try to create a different kind of Liberty channel and Liberty news site. I appreciate all your support. I will see you again on Tuesday.